take me to your early life. Take me into Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
What were some of the experiences in Toronto that stick with you today, like that stand out?
Like
What'd your
negative or
mom say?
positive? My mom said the most. Listen, my parents had problems even from the time I was born. The relationship was volatile, very passionate, competitive. I think at one point they must have really loved each other, but then it festered and grew into
different ways.
Something else. So I don't know a childhood with like two loving parents. I know a childhood with fighting parents and a lot of chaos and conflict. I'm the oldest of 3 girls. So my earliest memories are like my parents having, arguments about things. And then my mom, once they separated, my mom became, like, she was very strict. And I understand that culturally, we're Guyanese, we're West Indian. And so she was raised in a strict household, and that's how she knew to raise us. Education was always like the most important thing. And she would say it's because you can't depend on a husband or a man. Ooh. Very young, I was taught that, like age 5, 6, 7. This is what I'm hearing. You can't depend on a man. You can't depend on a man. So I always took school very seriously. I liked it. I was good at it.
Yeah.
I did what was expected of me. Be a lawyer, be a doctor. This is how you make money. These are the good jobs.
Good jobs.
So I did it. My father was an attorney. My parents always had good jobs. They were highly educated, and that's kind of
what stuck with you.
What stuck
like
with
that
me
work ethic,
was that,
sounds like.
and like you need a formal education to do something. It hindered me later on because, like, as a stylist, it made me a little bit reluctant or afraid to like go out on my own because I was like, wait, I haven't learned enough yet.
So you felt like you're like, actually, wait, let me go learn every single detail about this before I go try it.
Yeah, for sure. I felt like you had to sort of prove yourself or learn up to a certain point because that's how I did everything else, like college, law school, that career, that's what you have to do. In other careers, even interior design, it doesn't work that way.
Because it's a bit more creative, right? It's a bit more intuitive. It's a bit more opinionated. And yes, there is like, don't get me wrong, there is taste. Like, can't really teach taste, but like, I feel like it requires much more of you to be a critical thinker. And
it's very like learn on the job. Like, I was waiting for someone's approval, I think. I worked for other big stylists, and for some reason, I just remember thinking, okay, one day they're going to be like, you're ready, and like hand me a client or something. And nobody's doing that. So I had to lose that mentality of having to like graduate. In a freelance or creative career, there is no like moment where you're like graduate. You have to make those moves and opportunities like for yourself. Yeah.
You were also surrounded coming up by entrepreneurs, right? Like your grandmother had businesses, and she was like very much like strong.
She had to survive too. She had 12 children, and her husband died. She had to survive.
Wow. Wow. What kind of businesses do you remember?
Grocery store. They had a grocery store at the bottom of their house, and then she would buy properties and rent them out or sell them. Like that real estate investing strategy is older than time. Yeah. So that's what she would do.
That's what she would do.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, we got into real estate, like, based on like some of the stuff we were seeing, just generational wealth. It's like, it's one of the things that they tell you, like, this is what you should do.
And then our parents came here, they didn't have any, so now we have it because of our parents. But they didn't have it. Wow. So.
When did you end up moving moving into Florida?
So in 1995, I was 11 years old, and my mom and dad's divorce was finally, done with. And I think she wanted to start exploring a new relationship. I think it was easier for her to do that. This is my opinion. She's never said this to me. But I number one, she got a really good job in Florida. She hated the cold. Canadian winters are brutal.
Oh, yeah. Those are...
Yeah. Whew. I think she was sick of it. And I do think that she had met somebody and wanted to sort of have some distance to explore that away from the family and this,
and what people were saying and seeing. And like, what about your kids?
I think in a lot of ways, she wanted a fresh start. And also, she was always talking about like how in America there are way more colleges and universities. Like in Canada, there's a handful. For a country so large, there's really only a handful of secondary educational institutions. Here, there's a college on every street corner. It's like Starbucks, So I think she saw that for us too, that there were a lot of opportunities.
Yeah. What did you feel like when you got to Florida? Because
I
have
was
to imagine.
miserable.
Yeah, it's night and day.
I was miserable. You've been to Florida. Tampa, where we moved at the time in the 90s, nobody knew what I was. There wasn't a large Indian or West Indian community. It's grown now. But at the time, everybody's like, are you black? Are you
like, what are
Hispanic? It was those two,
Wow.
and that was it. And I was like, no. And then I just stopped explaining, and I was just like, sure. Whatever.
You're like, I'm not doing this.
Yeah, I was like, I'm whatever you want me to be. I don't know, you know?
Yeah.
So it was terrible. There was nobody who could relate to my culture. I missed all of my family, my cousins, my friends, everybody for a while. But then, you assimilate. You're a kid. Like, you just make it work.
Wow. How long did it take you to make it work, you feel like? And it's funny, I asked you because and she's gonna kill me for this, but our president actually moved down into Florida. She's Indian.
Oh.
She grew up in Boston, so cold, and then she went down to
Yeah,
Florida.
yeah,
And she's like, yeah, there's no one. There's no one.
Where did she move to? Do you know?
She I don't want to say, but she's
okay.
like, but she's down in Florida, and she's just like, it's a little different.
It is different. My perspective is of an angsty preteen teenager, so that probably made everything worse because high school sucked. I was not one of those people who loved high school. I was one of those people who was like, I can't wait to get out of here. So I would say it was pretty from age 12 to like 18 when I went away to college and I met my now husband. I met him at 17, 18.
Oh.
I think that's when things turned around for me. And I felt like, okay, I could be here.
You could be here.
Yeah. But that's a long time.
Yeah, that's a long time.
Yeah.
So throughout school, with work ethic and education being so important to you, did you just were you kind of just breezing through? It wasn't, how did you deal with staying away from distraction? You were just always on a linear path?
Yeah. I was never interested in drugs or alcohol in high school.
Yeah.
School wasn't too difficult for me. I was in the IB program, which is this accelerated high school thing. It wasn't difficult. I don't know. I think it was just in me. Yeah. I knew that it was my ticket to something else. I just knew that. I knew that if I want to go to college and get away and be on my own, this is what I needed to do.
So that became more so kind of
it was more the
motivation.
Freedom.
Yeah,
I didn't enjoy school. To this day, my kids are like, why do I have to learn geometry? I'm like, I don't know. You really don't.
You know what you should start telling them. You're like, it's your freedom. You want to get out of the house? Get good grades.
Yeah. Even I wish they would teach the kids about checkbooks or something, bank accounts.
I always say that. It's imagine if you actually learned about taxes and balancing a checkbook and how to be independent on your own. They don't really learn a lot of those
parents taught me
things.
that. I will say my mom taught me that. School didn't teach me that, but my mom taught me that. So I got my first. That's what helped too, assimilating. My mom was all for me getting a job. So as soon as I could, I got a job, and that gave me a little bit of freedom. For me, it was always free.
Do you remember?
I was 14. A family friend owned a gift shop in a hotel.
Yeah.
And so on Saturdays and Sundays, my mom would drop me off and I'd run the gift shop for them for $12 an hour. Or not even, maybe it was $10 an hour or something like that.
It's, some of those first jobs, you always remember them.
Yeah.
They teach you so much too.
I got a checking account. I had some money for clothes,
Yep. That's literally what I spent my money on my first job.
Yeah. And then when I was 15 and I could legally work, I got a job at Claire's in the mall. And in high school, all my friends would come and I would pierce their ears for them. So it was fun.
Yeah. That's where everybody would go to get their ears pierced.
Yeah.
Take me into law school. So you graduate law school at 25, and then the next 5 years, you're practicing lawyer.
Yeah.
How is that going?
I loved it because I came out of, when you come out of law school, the salary is big. You're 25 years old. You're making six figures. You're like, oh, okay, yes. I literally bought a Range Rover. I swear, got our own, apartment, this condo downtown. It was really cool. We had, I was married because I did get married in law school. Yeah. So it felt like all that yearning for freedom, I got it at 25. So I was more focused on that than actually developing a career. Again, law school was challenging, but then getting a job and the work and stuff, I didn't feel that it was like that hard. I felt like, okay, this is cool, but it's not like so thrilling or challenging. I wasn't that associate who would work till 10 o'clock at night. I was like at 5:30, like,
you're like, I'm going.
Bye, So for me, it was like, okay, I'm going to go to work, do a good job, get this paycheck, and live my life. So we traveled a lot, all over Europe, Asia. Like my husband and I, we had no kids. Like his family owned a liquor store, and he was in the family business with his dad. So we were able to take like time off. And as a first, second, third year associate in a law firm, you're really not that important. So I would take these vacations, and like it would be. I'm sure they didn't like it. It didn't show dedication. Looking back, but at the same time, I'm not like crucial to anything.
Any of the day-to-day brief
cases.
spaces that are happening.
No, you're just like a grunt worker.
Yeah, they're like, go give me these things or run this, do
Yeah.
this research and report or something like that.
Exactly. So around year 3, 4, I got put in charge of, and this is now 2012 maybe? 2011? No, earlier. I didn't have kids yet. 2009.
Okay.
2010, I don't know. I got put in charge of this large bank that everybody knows and hates, portfolio of cases, and I started working on it. It was all these investment properties. I did real estate litigation and bankruptcy and stuff. And then I had my first daughter, had my second daughter. Everything's going okay. I really started to like hate the work the more responsibility I got. And then the market crashed. And we were representing this bank in all these like commercial foreclosures. And that's when I really was like, what am I doing? I am helping this bank ruin lives every day.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's when I was really like searching for a way out.
The parallels happen. It's interesting. I went through a similar thing in my career where I was like, I thought this was like the thing. And I'm there and I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually helping anyone. Like I was like, I know we're taking a lot because we're taking their money and they're buying things. Yeah. But I don't know how we're helping anyone. How did that impact you? That part where you were like, I feel like a significant contributor to someone's demise.
I knew I was because I would have grown men, the other side, the borrowers, because I represented the bank. So the borrowers would call me before they got counsel directly because my name is on the lawsuit. Right? And they would be in tears, grown men, the age of my parents, crying, telling me that I was ruining their life. Wow. So I knew.
Yeah.
I knew.
How were you dealing with that energy that was being...
Terribly. I had my 2 girls, they were 1 and 2, and I just remember feeling like going home and trying to play with them, but my mind would be on this conversation I had today or whatever. And my husband understood. He just didn't really know how to like help me. I didn't know how to help myself. It was really hard to disconnect at the end of the day from that.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what age are you when this is happening? Like
29,
You're like
30.
29, 30.
Yeah.
You think at this place, you're like, they tell you going in your 30s, like this is when like, this is like a good area to be in your career, like 30s and 40s. You're essentially you want to be crushing it then.
On paper, everything looked good. We had a house. I still had my nice car.
You got that range.
I had the range. I kept that thing for 10 years. I love that car. I had the bags, the shoes. I was very well put together at all times. I had 2 cute kids, a great marriage. On paper, it was
good.
Great. It was what everyone always wanted. We had a cute house. Actually, I decorated it. Everybody was like very impressed with my decorating skills back then. So yeah, on paper it was great.
Wow. So what starts to happen then? Because you're like, it doesn't sound like this career path is where you want to go.
No.
So what starts to change? What do you start to change?
I started to feel like sick going to work, physically sick. So that was a big clue. And then I started to look around, so this is Florida. Yeah. I worked with a lot of older white men. Yeah. I started to internalize some of the things I was hearing them say. One partner I worked with, I was in charge of this portfolio for this big bank, and so I would staff it with other attorneys, especially attorneys who needed more work because their hours were lower or whatever. There was one black female associate who I thought was amazing. She was an associate, actually. She was a partner. Yeah. She was a little slow, so she was helping me with some cases. to get some more hours in. And I remember one of the older male attorneys I work with being like, well, it really doesn't matter if her hours are low because she's a protected species around here. And that comment will never leave me.
Whoa.
Yeah, he said it to me. And I'm like, what? What do you mean?
What do you mean?
He meant because she was a black woman, obviously.
Yep.
But then I'm sitting there like, but I'm not what? Like, what is the... Mind blown. I didn't really know what to say. You know? So I just kind of like said nothing. Now I would have a lot to say. But at 30 years old, when you're trying to make an impression, you're on a partner track. I had maybe 2 years left of associate before I was like up for partner. I was like, I can't do this. It was things like that I started to pay attention to.
Yeah, because you're like, why would I want to work in an environment where things like that are happening? It doesn't feel reflective of my values.
Right.
And then also, I'm a woman of color, and you're like, how am I like, I can't do this.
Am I exempt
year,
from that?
Are y'all saying that about me?
Yes. Yeah. I think the values thing really started to kick in then, because before it was just what my parents had always told me, which was like, make money, survive. Make money, survive. Prestige, make money, survive, right? They had to think that way.
Yeah, of course.
I think that point, that comment was when I started to be like, oh, no. Like, maybe my workplace should align with my values too.
Wow.
Because they swallowed a lot. My parents swallowed a lot.
Yeah, they I'm sure they dealt with so many comments, so much discrimination. Like, I can't imagine.
I didn't want to swallow it anymore. So
what did you do?
Be sad for a while, and then I started to come up with a plan.
It's real. Like, you gotta process your emotions.
Yeah. And my husband was like, what do you want to do? I remember having this conversation with him. He's like, what do you want to do? Just be happy. And I said it out loud to him the first time. I was like, I've always wanted to do something in fashion. And he's like, what does that mean? I don't know. And I'm like, I don't know what it means either.
Yeah, I don't know.
So I did my lawyer thing, and I started researching on the internet, like, what are the careers? So there were like magazine editors, designers, photographers, like all the players involved in that industry. And I remember watching like the Rachel Zoe project and like, shows like that were kind of starting to come on. And I was like, I think I could be a stylist. I don't know. So I like emailed a couple people cold emails and was like, tried to ask a few questions about what this career is. I got some responses. Some people don't have time. Yeah. So I cobbled together enough research. And I came to LA to do this seminar. At the time, this stylist named Luke Story was, I think he still has it, it's called School of Style, but he was offering these seminars about the business of styling, because that's what I was really curious about. Yeah. How do you make money doing this? It's all a big mystery.
Yeah, it's not really clear. No
one knows. So he did like a 2-day thing at the W Hotel in Hollywood. Yeah. And he broke it all down. You got this booklet. It was like, here's how you bill, here's how you get jobs, here are the websites you put your resume on, like the whole thing.
Yeah.
I found it very valuable. I don't think he does it anymore. But I felt at that point like, and that was my first trip to LA, because one of the conclusions I had come to in my research was you have to be in a fashion city. You got to go where the work
Proximity.
is. Yeah.
It's not going to happen in Florida.
And it still won't, I wasn't going to raise the kids in New York, I knew I'd be having $0, starting from scratch, no salary, right? Yeah. So New York just felt prohibitively expensive. Yeah. LA felt approachable. My sister was already living here.
Oh, wow.
It was sunny, it's beautiful. It's all the things that people love about LA.
Everything you see on TV.
Everything you see on TV. Because it kind of is that first time.
Yeah. When you come in, you're like, oh, yeah, this is what it looked like.
Yeah, it kind of is. So after that trip, I brought my husband back to like really sell it. And I took him everywhere. I was like, let's go to Malibu today. Let's go here. I really sold it, And he's very like supportive. So he was like, if you really think we can make this work, and he works in wine and spirits, and so there's obviously a lot of opportunity here for him. Yep. We made the decision as a family to come here because we thought it would be better for everyone. Because I could see the kids' school education quickly approaching too, and I could see what that would look like for them.
It's a lot to think about. Like, you're not just thinking about yourself. You're literally thinking about yourself, your relationship, your kids.
And even now, with like everything that Ron DeSantis is doing, I am so thankful that my kids, am I allowed to say that on this podcast?
Oh, you're fine.
I am so thankful that my kids don't have to go to school there. We made that choice. We took into account all of that. So that's how it happened. We chose LA. Yeah. We knew no one here except my sister. I knew no one in the industry. My husband ended up getting a job first, so we thought he would come and I would sell our house because the market was still bad.
Oh, wow.
You know, it took a long time to rebound in Florida after all that. So I was like, okay, yeah, you go ahead, and then when we sell the house, I'll come with the kids. I decided that weekend he got the job offer. The cleaning lady had come. The house looked good. I was like, I'm going to take some pictures and put it on Zillow. I sold that house in 48 hours
You
on
did
Zillow.
what?
Yeah. Full asking price.
Word.
48 hours on Zillow. This couple called me. I was at the beach. I will never forget this. We were at the beach on a Sunday. They're like, hey, we just saw your Zillow listing. Can we come see it this afternoon? I was like, okay, sure. And they came with a deposit check. They just walked around once. They were like, we just want to make sure it looked like the pictures. Handed me a deposit check right there.
Now, was that common for what was happening in the area at that time? Houses were staying on the market,
Houses were not selling. That's why I said to my husband, like, you go first.
Yeah, and I'll come.
And I'll come when this house sells or something, you know, because I wasn't ready to quit either. So I go into work on Monday and I'm like, hey.
Oh, you went on Monday, you're like.
Like, my house is under contract, we're leaving. And my boss was like, well, you're a part of this big project, this bank project that was ongoing with the foreclosures and the blah, blah, blah. And I was like, yeah, I don't know, because we didn't have a firm location here in LA. Then he says, that I knew of, then he says, well, we're opening our LA office in April. We haven't announced yet. He's like, but can you just keep going? You can work from home. And I was like, sure. They still don't like work from home, by the way. That was like a first. They were just like, you are instrumental to this project. We need you to finish it. We will send you your computer, everything, just work from home in California.
Wow.
So that's what I did.
That's what you did for a little while. How long did you do that before?
8 months.
You did it for 8 months.
Yeah.
At what point did you start to say, this is not working?
Oh, well, I got fired.
You got fired?
Yeah.
Why?
Because I got in a huge argument with my boss. Yeah. So long story short, I was keeping this project. The client didn't even know I moved. The client was in Arizona. I moved to California, kept everything going, no problem. They had no idea. End of the year comes and I didn't get a raise or a bonus. And it was this back and forth with my boss and the board and all that. And it was like, well, we're letting you work remotely. You didn't hit your hours. And so you should consider yourself lucky that you have this job. And that didn't sit right with me, you know.
I was like, you keep this client.
Yeah. And also I was moving. Like, I'm a human being.
Yeah.
To them, it was just numbers. To me, it was like, no. Like, I have, the value here is not just numbers. We couldn't come to terms. I wrote this email to my boss and I was like, this firm, you know, treats us like faceless robots. Like, I kind of went off. I'd known him for a long time, so I felt safe doing that.
You were sharing your how you truly felt.
Privately in an email, which you should never do. Don't ever write your feelings down. No. I learned that lesson that day. 3 days pass of silence, and then he calls. He's like, it's over. I'm like, okay.
Wow.
So I had no choice. But
how long had you been there?
That was in March. We moved in June, the following March.
But no, how long had you been with the company?
Oh, I was at that firm for 3 years, but I was with that partner since the start. He hired me at my first law firm, brought me to this new firm with him, and then he fired me.
That's tough.
Yeah.
That's tough.
It's a meal. I can laugh about it now.
Yeah.
I still haven't spoken to him. I probably would.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to get over it, you know?
No. I mean, I would. It would.
It felt very personal.
Yes.
He felt personally attacked by my email to him, which I didn't see coming. In hindsight, I probably should have.
It's hard in the moment, you know.
Yeah.
You're charged up and it's emotional and there's energy. It's like you're not thinking of all of the different angles of how someone's going to view that.
Yeah.
You know.
That's very kind of you. What you really should be saying is, no, idiot. You don't write this stuff down in an email.
We know that now.
We know that now.
You know, I think everyone has sent an email that they're like, where's the resend button?
Yeah.
Don't send this.
Yeah.
Like, you know, but it's hard. You're just like, I'm saying it.
I said it.
You said it.
And I got fired.
So you get fired. You're in LA.
Yep.
And you were researching different.
Well, I was already interning.
You're already
undercover.
Wait, so take me back, because you didn't have any experience, but I believe the resume had said law degree,
and
smarts,
a car.
and have a car.
Yeah. That's all it said. And I posted it on this website, and I sent it to the styling agencies in town, and I was like, hey, if any of your stylists need an assistant or an intern, let me know. And that started happening right away. Because you always need help as a stylist, manpower. Yeah. And then if you find good manpower, you keep hiring them. So I was already doing it part-time because the time difference worked to my advantage. Because I would get up early, do my East Coast stuff, and then I would go intern. No one knew what I was doing.
Wow.
Yeah. So I kind of had a little foothold.
You had a little foothold.
A little.
So it's going. How did that feel to you as you're getting into it? Were you like instantly like very interested in it?
I was. My first day as an intern, I was on a photo shoot with a very famous model for either Maxim or one of those, like, you know, and it was so glamorous. It was this house in the hills, all the shoes, all the clothes. Like, I was like, this is it. You know?
My goodness.
I was like enthralled. I was like, this is it. Yeah, I really was enjoying it for sure.
When you made the transition to doing that full time and having your own, you know, clients, and you had the Kardashians and Madonna and Daniel Radcliffe.
Yeah.
Did you feel fulfilled?
For a while. So all those big clients, I got to a point where I was like the super assistant. And so, you know, I would work with these big stylists, but they would trust me a lot to deal with the clients. And so it felt really good. Like I felt really fulfilled. Yes. There is something fulfilling about seeing your vision executed on a person and you make them feel good and, you know, all of that.
Yeah.
But after a while, it becomes so repetitive. You're not making any money. The fashion industry as a whole can be problematic that way. And you're putting in all this time. Sometimes the clients don't appreciate it because to them it's not their fault. It's just like another thing that they need.
Just another something they need or somebody that's around.
Who needs to, it's just part of their job. You know, they may appreciate you or like you or even, you know, become friends with you. But at the end of the day, you're just like sort of one piece of their puzzle. It's not so meaningful to them. So all these things combined really started to make me feel like, what am I doing? Again, it was that feeling of like, who am I serving? What am I helping here? I'm helping some rich celebrity, even though they're nice and whatever. I'm helping this rich celebrity. What? What am I doing? You know? I even did a stint with Nordstrom Digital where we would style like, and this was more so in the pandemic, where we would style regular customers remotely via the app. And even that was like not fulfilling because you're like, this isn't even like, I don't enjoy this fashion. It's not so creative. You're selling.
You're literally selling product,
you know?
right? At that point, you're like a personal shopper for them.
Yes. When I tell you I tried every avenue, I did advertisements. Well, that's boring because you're in, you know, you're buying khakis and tank tops, right? For the extras or whoever, or even like for the Nike commercial or whatever. It's good money. Is it fashion? No. You know, movies, I didn't want to deal with the set life. TV shows, you're dressing a character, so that's kind of cool, but it wasn't for me. Again, the hours. So I tried everything.
Wow. And then you're like, no, this isn't working out. So take me to Golden Globes 2019. Right? Because that was a big
that was the moment. Yeah. Where I was like, no, I really can't do this. So one of my dear friends, I assisted him for a long time. He's like the premier menswear stylist. He taught me everything I need to know about menswear. And he's like, look, we've got Andy Samberg, who we work with regularly. And when you're the main assistant to a stylist, you become like a partner, you know? So I had a great relationship with, you know, Sam and Andy and his assistant. I still talk to them and stuff like that. And Sam's like, Andy's hosting the Globes. And it was a really exciting experience.
Yeah, that's a big deal for a lot of people. Like, that is a moment.
Yeah, and you're backstage. We're doing all the promos. He was co-hosting with Sandra Oh, and so her stylist and everybody were there, and they were doing the commercials and the run-through, and I'm sitting in Idris Elba's seat just watching, you know, like all these things. It's cool. And then we're backstage during the actual ceremony. I'm seeing all these celebrities come through, and it was all very exciting, and I still was like, I want to go home. I'm tired. I didn't care.
Isn't it crazy when you get to that point? You know, it's like you could be around all these things that outwardly seem really cool.
Yeah.
But inwardly, they don't mean anything to you.
But it is cool, and no shade to the people who it's cool for.
Yeah, everybody has their personal meaning and attachment to different things.
Yeah, exactly. And it was a good paycheck, and it was a pinnacle job. It was all the things. And I still was like, so is this the height of it?
Is this it?
Is this it? I don't know.
You don't know.
Maybe it's ungrateful, you know?
You would read this book called The Surrender Experiment.
Surrender Experiment.
What was it about that book that you started to make your next pivot?
That came later. So 2019 January is the Globes. Then I'm continuing with all my e-commerce money-making jobs.
Yeah,
So I was
I still got to pay bills.
I'm going to make
get it.
money. And I even went back in to law a little bit. I was doing some like part-time sort of contract work with an old friend.
Okay.
So 2019, all of it, I was making good money again. And I wasn't being creative. And I just kind of gave up hope that like that was even an option to be creatively fulfilled and financially stable. So I didn't know what to look for. It wasn't like with styling where I was like, I want to try this. I didn't know.
You didn't know?
I even considered going back into law, really. What was that, 2019? So then I got pregnant in April. Thought about going back into law. I even interviewed with some fintech companies, and I think they were just like, this girl does not want this job. They would ask me questions like, well, what's your ideal day? And my ideal day, I would say stuff like, well, hopefully I have time for lunch. Hopefully I had time for a workout. Like, I was not the person that they wanted, you know? So obviously I didn't get hired. Then I had the baby in January 2020. So I was like, okay, I'm on maternity leave. Like, I'll figure something out. I have no idea. And then the pandemic happened.
The pandemic hit.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I had no answers.
Yeah, you got nothing. Yeah, pandemic's crazy. Like everybody's like, we're forced to sit at home.
No one's going anywhere.
No one's going anywhere. There's no one to style. You're not trying to go get this job you don't want.
Nope.
So you're not trying to get this job.
I'm not trying. Just wasting everybody's time. I'm so sorry if they ever see this. I'm just wasted your time.
What starts to call you? What starts to look interesting to you as you're at home and spending time?
Literally nothing. I was blacked out for the first 8 months with a baby and 2 kids homeschooling. I had that Nordstrom Digital job, so that paid for my maternity leave. And thank God for that corporate job. It was unfulfilling, but corporate benefits,
they're real.
Yeah.
That's the best benefits out there.
Yeah, it really, it was. And so my husband had his, we were on his benefits, but I got paid leave, you know. So all that, I was like, I'm not going to try and figure anything out now. I have no idea. Also, that after I didn't get that last fintech attorney job, that's when I read The Surrender Experiment. And that book is basically about doing nothing and just receiving what pops up for you. And I was like, what a novel concept for somebody who has just pushed and pushed and pushed and hustled and made plans and business plans and done the most. This man is saying and showing with his life and what happened that we're not really supposed to do that. If you just listen and pay attention and say yes to the opportunities that are popping up for you, you're going to end up more successful than if you were out there chasing things. Because what happens is we're often looking in a direction that isn't really for us, and so we're missing everything that is for us. And so if you ever read the book, you'll see like his life is incredible.
It's on the list. I put it on the list.
You got to read it.
I literally
By the end, anyway, I won't ruin it, but it's extraordinary, and he didn't chase any of it.
Wow.
You know? So I was like, okay, well, 2020 is going to be an experiment of me doing nothing. It was really scary, actually.
Yeah.
Like,
how did you deal with that initially? Because as someone, like you said, where it was instilled in you from such a young age, like work ethic, and then you're like, I'm not doing that right now.
Yeah. Well, the pandemic helped.
Yeah.
Because there was nothing to
do.
I couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
So by the end of 2020, I was just sort of like, okay, yeah, I'll still do this digital styling job. And, you know, the kids are kind of back in school, half a little bit here and there. I don't know. And then in 2021, people started going out again. And so my styling clients started returning. And so I was doing a little bit of that beginning of 2021. I was like, why not? And then one of my clients got a new place. And she was like, hey, you have good taste. I really trust you. Like, can you just help me? Your house is cute. Like, just decorate my house. And initially, my reaction was like, I don't do that. But then I remembered the book. And, you know, I was like, yes, I will do that.
That is so funny. Because if that nugget was never there,
I would have said no.
You would have said no.
Yeah.
Huh.
I would have said no, but it was my challenge to myself.
Yes.
You're going to do nothing and say yes. And so that's where it all started.
Mm-hmm. So you do nothing, you say yes. How's that project go?
So that project I said yes to is in Houston. Mm-hmm. My client was an influencer, and so she was like, hey, are there any furniture brands we can trade with? You know, I'll do pictures and a post or whatever. Yeah. So if there's anything I know how to do from being a stylist is ask for some free shit. That's your whole job, is to hit up brands and ask for stuff.
Get the samples.
So I was like, this can't be any different from like requesting sample. I don't know. So I, oh my God, and I just remembered this. I'm doing her apartment, and she must have put something on her social media that she was like working on her apartment. Yeah. This woman emailed her and was like, hey, I work with this furniture brand. We really admire you. We'd love to work with you on your place. And she forwards it to me. She's like, look what just came in. And I'm like, wow, I will take everything. Yeah. So we kind of did. We worked with that company to furnish her whole apartment. And then in March of 2021, I flew to Houston. Twice, I think. We had a ad campaign she was shooting, but then I also finalized the apartment, and we did some pictures. And she posted as part of her deal, and then tagged me and did a video and all this stuff. And then all of a sudden, so many people were like, oh, are you doing houses now? I need help with mine. I need help with mine. I need help with mine. And it kind of like snowballed out of nowhere. And I just kept saying yes.
You just kept saying yes.
Mm-hmm.
What were the transferable skills did you felt like?
All of them.
All of them, huh?
Yeah, all of them. I always say this, I could have graduated design school at 25, and it would have still taken me 15 years to end up where I am now. You know.
What about it do you feel like would have still been the same outcome?
I think that as a 25-year-old trying to figure out your career, there's so much you don't know about how to operate in the real world. So how would design school doesn't teach you about contracts, customer service, all the things that are important to running a business. It doesn't even probably teach you how to source. Like design school, styling taught me how to source and create mood boards and communicate a creative concept to a client. All that I learned from styling. So all that was transferable. And then the legal portion, of course, contracts, hourly billing, client service. One thing all three careers have in common is that client service. You don't learn that in design school. So it would have taken me, I think, 15 years
to get to this point.
To get to this point. Even styling taught me the power of a photo, because I've probably been on like over 200 photo shoots and video, at this point. And that is crucial to building an interior design business, is the photos and presenting your work.
The presentation. Yeah.
So all that, I already had all that.
Wow.
So I just knew.
Huh. When you're transitioning into this career now, at that point, not now, you've been doing this, but what's happening in your head? Does self-doubt ever creep in, or you're like, I don't know what am I doing?
Yeah, I think everybody feels like that. One of my clients is Jay Shetty, and I remember talking to him early on about it, because he was one of my very first supporters. Like, he hired me to do his podcast studio, and I'm still working on the house. Yeah. It's an ongoing project, and I remember telling him he was like, you're doing great. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I have imposter syndrome. He's like, imposter syndrome is a good thing. It keeps you moving. It keeps you wanting to do better. It keeps you pushing yourself because you're never so sure of yourself. And I think he's right. Yeah. I think
Jay's probably a good person to listen to. I listen to his podcast a couple times a week in the morning.
You do?
I got to imagine, like...
Jay gives me nuggets. Last year I spent a season designing for the Property Brothers, and they give me nuggets. I pick up on their nuggets too, because they look at their net worth, look at their reach. Yeah. I've been privileged enough to be in very close proximity with people who are very, very successful in their respective industries, and so I'm always listening. I think I got that from being a stylist too, because you do have to be a fly on the wall.
You have to, because there's some things like direct communication, you won't get it. No. It has to come from emotion and feeling and like what's not
and
being
listening.
Said. Yeah.
I feel self-doubt all the time still. And it just motivates me to work harder than everybody else,
How do you deal with it? Is more so like the nuggets you get from some of these folks that you'd mentioned, and then like looking back and saying like, well, look what you've kind of done already, so what are you saying?
How do I deal with it? I think when it creeps in, I just kind of tell myself, like, just do your best. That's all you can do. I just repeat to myself, like, whatever the best is you can do here, just do it. That has to be good enough. It has to be. I can't do anything else.
You can't do any more than that.
No.
Take me to the experience of designing with you. When you're, if you were to do my home, where would you start?
I start with you and your wife or whoever lives in the house. And it's more a question of how you live. We get into the way it looks later. It's function first, and how you want to feel when it's over. How do you want to move around the space when it's over? Who is in your family? Who lives here? Who's coming over? We get into your lifestyle. That's where it has to start. Then we do mood boards, and then we think about how we can marry the two. Like this aesthetic you want to achieve, will it work for really how you live? Like, you may love a white sofa. You may love white kitchen countertops, but the reality is that if you're entertaining a lot, you drink wine, whatever, you have kids and pets, and maybe we need to figure something else out, you know? But it starts with you.
It starts with you.
Yeah.
What were the principles of your design that you brought into your own studio that you would stand up and function as your business? Like, what did you bring into there?
My personal aesthetic, you mean? Yeah. I really, I didn't think it was that important, my personal aesthetic at first, and so I spent a lot of time giving people what they wanted. I have learned a lot about marketing. That has always been the missing piece for me, marketing, because no one ever taught me how. As an attorney, they don't teach you. As a stylist, no one teaches you. But I, again, observed all the PR people I was working with who are still my friends today, and like what they do for their brands. I absorbed so much of that in being a stylist. And then I turned around and applied it to interior design, and I was like, oh, you have to have a niche. You can't speak to everybody, you know? So at first I was trying to speak to everybody, and my designs were kind of generic looking back. And then the project that landed me in Arc Digest had so much cultural influence, both from myself and the homeowner who is also Indian. And something clicked. I was like, this is what I like. People respond to it. Not everybody is going to want it, but the clients that I want to work with who are going to pay for this and who are going to hire me, this is what I should be doing. This is what I should be putting out there. So I would say it's partially my culture. Those influences that I grew up with, being like Indian and Caribbean, and like using culture and things with age and things that have a story, and everything is not shiny and new. Like, I don't really do modern design, or if I do, there's something in it that is historical or, you know, cultural of some sort. So over the past year specifically, I've really tried to lean into that. And it's resulted in me having now large projects that allow me to fully be myself, you know?
There's something about being able to be yourself and be successfully doing what you want to be doing. Yeah. Because to me, there's nothing worse than being successful and not being yourself. Yeah. Right? Not being able to celebrate your culture and where you're from. Exactly. It's just a weird experience.
Exactly. And so now our clients are generally people of color, or sometimes mixed race couples, or just people who want that integration of whatever their culture is and like our American lifestyle today, because that is exactly who I am. And so now I'm able to like help other people achieve that, you know, for themselves. I really enjoy it.
Really enjoy it. Tell me about the name behind your firm.
Sagrada. So we came up with that name. My husband and I did this like word exercise. I don't know if you ever listened to How I Built This by Guy Raz.
All the time.
Yeah. So the founder of Zillow, he talked about this exercise he did to come up with the name Zillow, where he was like, okay, I want to do this website that has to do with home and real estate. So he made a column of words that have to do with home and a column of words that have to do with real estate. And in the real estate column, there was the word zillions, and in the home column, there was the word pillow. And so he put them together and he came up with Zillow. That's not what I did, but we did do that exercise, and none of it was feeling right. It was all sounding stupid. So then I like really sat down. I was like, what is our studio about? And I was like, well, it's international, eclectic design. I truly believe that the places we live and create and work are very important. I want people to understand that, like, subtly, that you're not going to get anything necessarily American, like we're not churning out farmhouses, traditional farmhouses and that kind of thing. So I was like, I think it needs to be a word in another language. I tried Hindi words, I tried, all kinds of words. Yeah. And then I came across this word Sagrada, which in Spanish and I think in Tagalog means sacred. And I was like, that sounds nice. And then I started playing around with logos and I was like, I think that looks nice. Yeah. And I like tested it out. And so it felt right. Sagrada Studio felt right because I do think that like the spaces we inhabit are very sacred and they deserve intention, so that's how it came about.
When it has that meaning, I think it also reminds you to make sure you're bringing that into every project, every client. And as you grow, making sure that the people that you bring on board to support you get that.
Exactly. The importance of a brand identity, I didn't really learn or appreciate until I became an interior designer. Yeah.
And it's your thing.
Yeah.
Like it's a representation of like your values and what you care about.
Yeah. But I think everybody needs a brand identity. Like no matter if you are an attorney, like people should associate you with something.
They should still know.
They should still know what you stand for somehow.
Right.
Or as a stylist, like you as a person, regardless of what you're doing, you have to have some kind of brand identity.
So in addition to this business, you're also on Property Brothers. Like you're working with them, and you mentioned them earlier. Tell us about that. Like, how did that even happen?
So I'm not going to move forward. I did one full season, 4 projects with them, big projects, and it was an amazing experience. I was a ghost designer on the show, so they are more on camera talent, and they do design, or they sort of collaborate a little bit on the designs. But they hire designers to art direct each episode of the show, and it was an amazing experience. I got that behind the scenes look at how this TV magic is created in terms of interior, like home design. I was always curious about that. And then Drew and Jonathan are so gracious, like really nice dudes. Like, Hollywood has not gotten to them at all. They have a lot of experience in real estate, in construction. Like, it was like a year of education, and then I turned out 4 great projects for our portfolio, you know?
Wow. What was the decision where you're like, okay, you just want to kind of get back to like the day-to-day?
I think that when we started talking about this season, and I did at first sign on to this next season, things started happening in our business that I had to, again, you're at a point where you can only do so much.
You can only do so much. Yeah.
And it got to a point where it was like, I know how time consuming every construction job is. And so where am I going to put my energy? Am I going to put my energy into the things that I have to share credit with the Property Brothers for? Or am I going to put my energy into these things that are just me alone? And so it was just time. And they were so nice. They sent me some lovely messages, like saying goodbye. And, it was a wonderful experience. Yeah.
With all of those things happening, you're still in a marriage and you have kids. Like, how do you balance all of that?
There's no balance. Some days the kids and my husband win, and some days the business wins. There's no balance.
There's no, balance is it's not a real thing. It's more kind of harmony.
I do have a very supportive and equal partner. He cooks, does hair just as much as I do. In fact, more. I don't cook. And then, we have a housekeeper who helps us. Like, you need help.
You need help.
Yeah. It's not, I don't care how much money I make. If I have $100 for a housekeeper, I'm picking a housekeeper,
I mean, I also find the housekeeper saves me from arguments. So.
Yes, this is what I'm saying, and your time. Like, who wants to spend 4 hours cleaning? You could be doing other things, like spending time with your family or whatever, know. It's just about prioritizing. Balance is there's no balance. It's like every day, what is a priority? So
I love that. Balance. Every day, what's the priority? Tell me about if you thought about advice you would have for someone who may be looking to make a pivot. But they don't know where to start. What advice would you have for them?
Do nothing and say yes. Can I say that? Really, truly, that's what led me to this. Just kind of shift your mentality. If there's an inkling of something that you like or enjoy, sure, research it or whatever. But honestly, you don't really have to, this is controversial, maybe unpopular opinion, but I don't think you need to do or chase anything necessarily. I think if you just stop, pay attention to what people are asking you to do. Like, what are those things that growing up, everyone always asks you for advice on? And all of us have that. All of us have something that people always come to us for, you know? For me, it was always like hair, makeup, fashion, you know, decor, like, oh, do you like this credenza for my apartment? Like aesthetic.
Yeah.
Looking back, that's since I was little, that's what it was.
Yeah.
And then, you know, societal pressure made me go in a different direction. Not that I regret it, but it's just something that was always there.
Yeah.
The signs are there. I think people need to sit still more and pay attention. And then even if something doesn't feel like, you know, something you would necessarily pursue, just try it. Be curious. You know, if someone asks you to, like my client who actually asked me to decorate her house and I was her stylist, she owns a beauty brand, and at one point in the pandemic, she was like, hey, we need merch. You have good taste. Can you design it and get it produced? And I was like, okay. So I did.
So you did.
And it was fun. It's not something that I necessarily want to do,
going,
but I almost wonder, because I have a few collaborations that I'm working on now with brands. I'm like, I'm glad I did that, because now I kind of understand.
You kind of understand the process.
Yeah. If I hadn't said yes to that, then I would kind of be in the dark, you know, but I think it was a valuable experience. And I like doing it. It's just not something, I'm not going to go produce merch for a living.
Sometimes it's just trying and seeing what something is. It doesn't mean you need to commit to doing it your entire life.
And if you're getting paid to do it, and like this, you know, clearly this particular client has a lot of trust in me creatively. And I don't know, I think I gained something from the experience of creating merch. We've created our own merch, like for our studio, and people love it, and it's a good marketing tool. So in that process, I learned about the power of merch as a marketing tool.
Yeah.
It was worthwhile to me.
I love that.
Yeah. I think you just need to say yes.
I think you need to say yes.
Yeah.
That's the biggest takeaway today.
You do.
You need to say yes.
Yeah.
Do nothing and say
Stop chasing. Stop. People expend, I tell my kids this too, like I'll tell anybody who will listen, people expend too much energy, whether it's relationships or career or whatever, just chasing things. Everybody needs to just not. You know, the things will find you. I am proof that things will find you. Yeah. You know, I get it when you have bills to pay. You could do you got to do something. But if you try to make a big career pivot, I don't necessarily think you need to do anything but pay attention.
Wow. Thank you so much. Yeah. Like that was brilliant. Like I truly, no one's really come on here and said that.
Yeah.
No one's come on here and
said. It's not popular.
No one's come on here and said.
Most of the people who are looking to make a pivot are probably like type A people who are like unhappy and they want to get out of a situation, and so they're proactive. And so it goes against everything in your nature, if you're a person like that, to not do something.
Yeah. But
really, the thing that flowed and worked and continues to work for me in our business, I don't take out ads in magazines. I don't like, I make small moves here and there. Like I hired a PR person, but like, I don't go around chasing editors or chasing clients or anything like that. I just kind of like respond and keep creating and putting things out there.
That's dope.
Yeah.
It's
easier. It's better for your mental health.
It's better for your mental health.
Yeah.
Thank you for sitting with us.
Thanks for having me.
Really dope.